Chapter 23. 1. Elliot's flower crown was askew. It sat crooked on his head as he stared into the Beltane bonfire. His dark hair contrasted sharply with the white petals of the daisies, and his cheeks were pink from the warmth of the fire. When he turned to look at her, his eyes were bright with excitement behind his glasses, their lenses reflecting the flames. Daisy was going to reach up and fix the crown, but she liked it this way, a little crooked, a little messy. Elliot looked playful and undone. He looked like maybe she'd found him dancing in the forest, celebrating the coming of summer, lush and full of life. "This is fun," he said, gesturing to where townsfolk were walking and skipping and dancing between the two fires, some with their pets in tow, to protect them in the coming year. I mean, historically speaking, it's not exactly accurate. I don't think the ancient Celts cared much about blessing their pet iguanas, and I'm pretty sure this May wine is just sangria. He lifted his plastic cup, and some of the wine sloshed over the rim. Daisy wondered just how many refills he'd had, but it's really fun. Daisy smiled at him in agreement. They were set up on an old blanket she'd thrown in her bag this afternoon. Plenty of other groups and couples were seated on the grass as well, with the two fires in the center. It was fully dark now, the sky above them dotted with stars, and the fingernail crescent moon hung just above the treetops. She leaned against Elliot's side, and he put his arm around her, surrounding her with his warmth, and she didn't know anymore what she was doing, but she knew she liked Elliot's arm around her. She liked how he looked at her and how he kissed her. She liked how he made her feel safe and wanted. Daisy liked a lot of things about Elliot, but she didn't want to add him to her list of mistakes. She didn't want to run into him a year from now and have to call him an ex. Would she call him that if this whole thing stayed fake? Running into David and Matthew simultaneously had been a timely reminder of how much she'd screwed up her love life in the past, and she'd meant what she told Elliot when she proposed a friends with benefits situation. She was too tired to try again. She was just coming back to life after a year of mourning her last failed relationship. Falling into another one was a mistake, right? She sighed and Elliot held her closer. She leaned against him and tried not to think about the future. Things never seemed to work out for her there. Maybe she wouldn't think about how this thing ended, because all things did end. Daisy had been sure she'd found this before, this feeling, this connection with another person, and she'd been wrong every time. That was what she'd tried to tell Elliot the night he made her come harder than either of her exes ever had. But orgasms alone didn't make for lasting relationships. She couldn't put her heart on the line again. But as she sat snuggled close to Elliot, she couldn't help but wonder, had being with David ever felt like this? Had Matthew ever made her feel safe? She didn't know anymore. Beyond the fires, on the stage, Cliff's Midnight Dreamers started up, playing Celtic music on fiddles and drums. And was that Norm on the accordion? "They're pretty good," Elliot said, his mouth close to her ear, his breath warm on her skin. "They really are." Alex from the bookstore was wailing on the fiddle, and soon Cliff joined in with a surprisingly deep and soothing singing voice. The crowd was up and dancing, abandoning their blankets and gleefully grabbing partners to swing wildly around in a dance that no one really knew, but everyone pretended to. "Should we dance?" Elliot whispered against her ear. "Only if you want to. Do you want to dance, Daisy?" he asked, and he sounded looser than usual, sillier. She could hear the laughter in his voice. Maybe that May wine was working its magic. Maybe she should give in. Just for the night. After all, Elliot wasn't asking for marriage. He was just asking for a dance. "Yes," she said, and Elliot stood and reached down for her hand. She took it and he pulled her up, laughing when she ended up crushed tight to his chest. They stood like that for a moment, with her pressed against him and his grin lighting up the night, and then he grabbed her hand and twirled her round. Her giggles joined the rising tide of laughter and cheering around them. She spotted Noah nearby, spinning a niece with each hand. The girls giggled as they spun. Hazel and Jeannie skipped together between the fire with the disgruntled Casper between them. As soon as they were through, the cat jumped down from Jeannie's arms and sprinted into the darkness. "At least you're protected from evil spirits now," Jeannie called after him. "He is the evil spirit," Hazel said with a laugh, circling back to Noah's side. "More wood, boys," Jeannie called, and Logan and Bennett brought over a few more armloads to add to the fires. As soon as Bennett was done, Kira tugged him away into the shadows, a cheeky grin on her face. Iris waved to Daisy as she and Archer made their way through the dancers. Olive was perched on Archer's shoulder with her flower crown still on her head, even if it was a little more squished than it had been when she picked it out. Daisy knew Owen was safe at home with a babysitter. "Bye, Daisy," Olive called. "Thank you for my flowers." "You're very welcome," Daisy said, waving to the little girl. Archer grinned, grabbing Iris's hand as they wandered off into the darkness beyond the fire and toward home. A home filled with love and babies. ... Something Daisy always thought she'd have. She shook her head, spinning and dancing with Elliot until his crown was even more crooked, and Daisy was out of breath. He pulled her close again. "Is that the mailman and the lady who sold me my house making out over there?" he asked, nodding his chin in the direction of the couple in question. "It sure is. And is that Crystal who makes me my coffee every morning riding away on the back of a very large man?" Daisy giggled. "That's her. Football player. Wow. And, oh my God," he whisper-shouted. "There goes Jack and Gabe sneaking off together. We told you it's Beltane. It makes everyone frisky." She tried to say it like she was joking, but his gaze snagged on hers, and she was sure if it was light enough, she would see the red creeping to the tips of his ears. "I want you, Daisy." He'd said that, hadn't he? "Right," he said, his voice hoarse from laughing and dancing. "You mentioned that. It doesn't mean we have to... You've made your feelings about a casual hookup very clear. You've done plenty just by coming with me. If dancing at Beltane doesn't break the curse, then I don't know what will." "You're not cursed, Daisy," he whispered, tucking her hair behind her ear. "You're perfect, just in case I haven't been clear about that." He cupped her face in his hands so that when he leaned down to kiss her, she was held captive, trapped in his grasp, safe in his hands. His lips were soft and sweet, and he tasted like wine and fruit. Daisy wrapped her arms around his neck and let her fingers toy with the longer hair at the nape of his neck. She let herself melt into him and sway to the music. She let herself surrender to the magic of the night. Everything was warm and glowing. The music vibrated through her, keeping her blood humming and her body calling out for more. Elliot groaned against her lips when she pressed her body to his, and she sighed in return when his arms wrapped around her, holding her tight. "Maybe I was wrong about what I said the other day," he said, his eyes dark when he pulled away to look at her. "Maybe we should." She was about to say they absolutely should, lust once again winning out over rationality, when they were interrupted by a teasing voice. "Don't you two look cozy?" Annie said, carrying a tray of drinks. "More May wine?" Mac's Pub was providing the libations for the evening, and apparently, after selling out of her baked goods, Annie was helping as a server. "I'll take another," Elliot said, grabbing a cup and pulling out his phone to Venmo the pub. "I'm good." Daisy figured one of them should keep their, by the end of the night, senses about them, or she really would end up knocked up. Annie smiled at her, her blonde brows rising just slightly, just enough to make Daisy's cheeks heat. "You guys having fun?" she asked. "TM having a great time," Elliot said, slinging an arm over Daisy's shoulder, and Annie's smile grew. "Great, glad to hear it. Hey Annabelle, you selling drinks or chatting?" Mac called from the drink tent. "Hey Macaulay, call me that one more time and see what happens." Annie yelled back and Mac laughed. "Just get your cute butt back here," he called again, eliciting some hoots and hollers from the crowd. Annie flipped him off and the crowd cheered. "So, it's going well between you two?" Daisy asked with a laugh. "Very well. I remind Mac every day how lucky he is to be with me." Annie grinned. "I should continue my rounds. Enjoy." She walked off, quickly selling off her wares and then heading back to Mac. He scooped her up and kissed her in front of the whole waiting line, and Annie didn't look mad at all. Beltane magic. Maybe it could work for Daisy too. Elliot was drunk. That much had become increasingly clear over the last hour of the festival, and now as he and Daisy meandered back to the flower shop, it was obvious. Main Street was empty save for a few stragglers heading back to their cars, or walking the few blocks home, which was for the best considering drunk Elliot apparently liked to sing. "Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer do," he crooned as they walked. "I'm half crazy all for the love of you." Daisy hadn't heard this song since her grandpa used to sing it to her when she was little. Despite the curious stares from a few people walking across the street from them, Daisy smiled. "It won't be a stylish marriage. I can't afford a carriage. But you'll look sweet upon the seat of my bicycle built for Tro." Elliot threw his arms out on that last note, really going for it, and he got a smattering of applause from the others on the street, and one call for an encore. Do you know that one? He asked, ignoring his new fans. I do actually. It's a good one. Very good. It's about you. Is it? It should be. Okay, Elliot, she said with a laugh, steering him toward the shop with one arm around his waist. He slung his arm over her shoulder. You're so pretty, he said. Thank you, Town. No, I mean it. You're the prettiest girl in the entire. Was still nice to hear. Daisy bit down on a smile. Sure, he was drunk, but it. Thank you, Elliot. Probably in the entire world. I think you're getting carried away. She could feel him shrug. I don't think so. I think you're the prettiest girl in the entire world. He started humming Bicycle Built for Two again, and she realized there was no way he was driving home. Or walking for that matter. He was barely putting one foot in front of the other as it was. Hey Elliot, where do you live here? I know, but what's your address? This seemed to stump him. He told her several addresses, none of which were in Dream Harbor. He was very insistent on a particular one in New York, that she was sure must have been his house with his ex, and she wasn't about to point that out. Not right now. Not when Elliot's version of being sloppy drunk involved serenades and compliments. I think you need to spend the night. His brows rose comically high above his glasses. Sleepover, yep. He groaned a little bit. I'm sorry I drank too much fairy wine, he said, leaning into her as she unlocked the door, and she tried not to laugh at his new name for the wine he'd been drinking all night. That's okay. That stuff packs a punch. They walked through the darkened shop, Elliot's arm still draped over her shoulder. He wasn't putting his weight on her, but he was definitely letting her guide him past the flowers and the mess she'd left behind in her hurry to get to the festival. I was nervous about tonight, about hooking up, he whispered, his breath tickling her ear, confessing. I was too. You were? He sounded shocked, which almost made Daisy laugh. Of course. I didn't know. I mean, I wasn't sure what you would want, after you said you didn't want to be fuck buddies. Me, neither, he said with a groan as he plopped onto the end of her bed, which, luckily, she had pulled down from the wall before she left. Elliot looked suddenly lost as he took the crown from his head. Daisy moved closer to brush the petals from his hair. He opened his legs, and she stepped between them. His hands found her hips. We're not going to hook up tonight, she said. Igno, and maybe we should stop calling it that. It sounds ridiculous. Definitely, he said with a laugh. I'm sorry, Daisy, don't be. This is for the best. It's safer this way. Elliot let out a sad little moan and rested his head against her clavicle. His fingers gripped her hips tighter, like maybe he didn't think this was for the best at all. Like, maybe he wished they were having an entirely different type of sleepover. You're probably right, he said as she ran her fingers through his hair. It was thick and dark, and she resisted the urge to tug on it. He smelled like wine and fruit and bonfire smoke. She probably did too, like summer and desire. She nearly changed her mind. She nearly pushed him back on her bed and climbed on top of him. She pressed a chaste kiss to his head, but then what? Forcing herself to do the right thing, the responsible thing. Sleeping with Elliot while he was drunk was morally questionable at best, and definitely not going to lead to a good time. She hadn't been able to convince him that they could sleep together casually while he was sober. She certainly shouldn't try while he was drunk. She extracted herself from between his legs, his hands lingering on her hips, but finally letting go as she pulled away, backing up toward the kitchen. You should have some water. She poured him a glass, needing to put some space between them, which was nearly impossible in this tiny apartment. Thanks. His eyes were dark, his lips wine-stained, and his hair a mess from her fingers as she handed him the glass. She needed to get out of here. I'm going to get ready for bed. I'll be right back. She left him on the bed singing quietly to himself as she went into the bathroom, closing the door behind her, shutting Elliot and his tempting mouth and strong hands out. She gulped a deep breath, repeating to herself that this was for the best. Sex would only make things worse, more complicated, harder to recover from. But then she thought about the way Elliot's fingers dug into her hip bones, and the way his hair felt in her hands, and the way he kissed her like he meant it, like he had put his whole self into that kiss, and she thought she needed to give Mac a piece of her mind tomorrow about the strength of those damn drinks, because this did not feel like it was for the best at all. It felt like they'd gotten so close only to have the moment ruined. She went round and round like that as she did her nightly routine, wanting Elliot while not wanting to get hurt by him, or to hurt him. round and round until she had no idea where she'd landed. By the time her face was washed and moisturized, and her teeth flossed and brushed, and she returned to the bedroom, Elliot was fast asleep. The decision was made for her. Daisy gently took off his glasses. He sighed a little when she did, and she couldn't help but push his hair away from his forehead. Why did he have to look so damn pretty? She put the glasses on the table and then curled up on her own side of the bed, determined not to touch him anymore, not to make this feeling in her chest worse. The first night they slept together was turning out just as fake as the rest of their relationship, but the frustration of not having him for real was building.